Good day, everyone. This is Paul, and this is a long overdue video game review that I originally wanted to wait until I had tested out every single mode and every single character and yada yada yada. But I figured that that was the problem I had with my two Super Smash Bros. Reviews, was that because I tried to talk about everything, it made the videos a lot longer than I had hoped. So I'm going to try to briefly summarize the entire game, yes, with most of the DLC, in sort of one compact package, because it all really boils down to the same thing. So I'm going to be talking about Hyrule Warriors for the Wii U. Now, when I first saw this game, I was like, whoa, is that what the next Zelda game is capable of? But the thing is, it's not a Zelda game. It's Dynasty Warriors style gameplay mixed with Zelda locations, characters, items, etc. So it's basically 95% Zelda, 5% Dynasty Warriors. And now I've seen people make fun of people that review Hyrule Warriors, and they quoted a bunch of other YouTubers that say, well, I've never played a Dynasty Warriors game. Well, I stopped playing Dynasty Warriors after the PlayStation 2 era. I've never actually played a Dynasty Warriors game. And I count myself among them. So if there's someone out there that's going to review Hyrule Warriors and quote a bunch of YouTubers, you can random YouTuber, go ahead and use this video as an example, because I have not even touched a Dynasty Warriors game. But I am a huge fan of Zelda, and if there's one thing that this game exceeds at, if nothing else, it's massive Zelda fan service, especially if you've got the latest update and DLC and one of the Link amiibos. This game just, every little touch is basically sort of a little love letter to everyone who's been fans of Zelda. And a few of them, it's just about time. Seriously, why didn't we have this in a Zelda game before? In fact, some of the ideas are so good, sometimes I wonder why they're not going to be in the next Zelda. It's hard to explain all of them, because that would make this video twice as long, but suffice to say that most of the characters are from an established franchise, but their movesets are super over the top, totally exaggerating their personality. So maybe it would be giving you a better picture, if you don't know what a Dynasty Warriors game is, to describe the basic gameplay. So you've got hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of enemies just swarming at you, and you're basically this one-man army that has to fight off all of these soldiers in large groups at once. You have finishing moves that can kill off 50 enemies at once. And most of the enemies are kind of stupid. Some of them don't even attack you, and if they do, they usually take minor damage. So it's pretty much like mowing the grass, except you're mowing the enemies instead. And so as a result, you obviously have a bunch of moves, and like Super Smash Bros., they're super simple to execute. Most of them just involve rotating between the B and the Y buttons. I've only tested the Wii U gamepad, so I can't speak for the effectiveness of the Wii Remote and Nunchuck combo, but I do like the feel of the gamepad, even if I feel like it was kind of underused. It basically just tells you your mission objectives, and that's about it. But I do love the fact that the Wii U's horsepower makes this game an absolute joy to look at. Now, I've heard some people complain that the textures aren't the best. Me, I could care less. Because it was such a love letter to the Zelda fan service, they didn't necessarily try to redesign certain elements of it, because most of the game takes place in locales based on Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword. And Skyward Sword didn't come out too long before this game's release. So as a result, there wasn't really much need to polish it, because a lot of people really liked how that game looked. Twilight Princess, same thing. Twilight Princess HD came out 2 years after this game. And so as a result, you could say this game is kind of the blueprint of how Twilight Princess HD was kind of supposed to look. Now, getting back to Zelda fan service. So, well, I guess I can't compare, but you do get items, albeit only 4, and you use those items against certain enemies to expose their weaknesses. Because once an enemy is exposed in a certain way, then you'll see a weak point gauge, and if you deplete that enough, then you'll do this epic Final Smash-esque move to deal massive damage to them. And I must say that the the battles against the actually competent enemy generals are incredible. Like, when I was facing off against Ganondorf, I truly felt like he was the king of evil, and not just some wimp like he is in most of the Zelda games I've played. And I like the fact that the characters control differently enough, but they're similar that in the fact that you can easily like pick up and play most of their combos in the first couple of seconds of stepping onto the battlefield. But yet, when you're playing as Ganondorf, you feel just like, oh my gosh, I am unstoppable. Because of, Ganondorf's arrogant attitude. When you're Link, you feel like you're the hero gallantly dashing forth into battle. Especially if you bought the Twilight Princess DLC pack and got Epona as an unlockable weapon, which never gets old. And then you got all the extra little stuff that the game has. And it takes about as long as Super Smash Bros. To collect everything, because there's 4 adventure mode maps, which, to sort of briefly summarize that mode, is each map takes place on a pixelated version of another Zelda game's world map. So, like, the first one is the original Zelda map, and you can discover secrets that were actually in the original game, and a few that weren't. And then that in turn will give you secret rewards that you can get by completing the objectives on each square of the map. But the problem with that is that it falls into the same trap as every other mode in the game, and that's you really don't do much outside of mindless hacking of enemies and occasionally using a special move to wipe out more of them at a time. There's a lot of running around in the game because there are these forts, or keeps as they call them in the game, and the more keeps that are taken over by the enemies, the less morale your troops are going to have. And so as a result, if your allied base ends up falling, you lose the whole battle. And so that involves a certain amount of strategic planning, but unlike games like Fire Emblem, this is all real time. And since you're only one person, you'll often hear someone shouting, "Someone help us!" But then your main mission is to go over here, and so you have to prioritize, do I want to go here or here? And sometimes you have to do both. You're often rushing across the battlefield, and sometimes you have to just run right past the enemies. And it's super chaotic and out of control. And considering that I played this game after Hyrule Warriors Legends had already come out, I was a little bit disappointed by the fact that you couldn't like switch characters on the fly, because I was like, oh my gosh, how the heck are my allied units so stupid? Like, most of the soldiers in your army, they kind of just stand there and kind of let themselves be killed. And then your allied units really don't help that much. So you basically do all the work yourself. And that just... I mean, if they had even done half of the work for me, I would have felt like I was really part of an army. But no, it's more like the game should have been called Hyrule Warrior, without the S in it. So, I did like the strategic aspects. I loved the music. But believe it or not, I actually liked the brand new tracks better than the Zelda tracks. Most of the songs that were based on Zelda tunes were just like heavy rockified, and I'm not a huge fan of that genre. But they do have some nice chorus and orchestra pieces, which I'm gonna totally eat up. And the game has a very, like, end-gamey feel that makes it way more epic than a Zelda game should be, including a really spectacular final battle. But, ultimately, a lot of you are probably going to find it a mind-numbing experience. And especially if you have the new 3DS, you'll probably want to get Legends instead because of its new modes, and the fact that all of the paid DLC in the Wii U version is already in the 3DS version, no extra charge, which is kind of a letdown because I had to pay for like all of the new characters, including the Legends characters, which it's nice to see them in HD, and I got the newer characters like Yuka and Ravio. And I did try out the amiibo functionality, which was minimal. It lets Link have the spinner from Twilight Princess as an optional weapon, which looks beyond cool, but apart from that, you can tap an amiibo a day to get a random present, which sometimes can be kind of pathetic, like 1 rupee. Sometimes you get 50,000 rupees. But overall, it just feels like the amiibos were an afterthought, which they technically were, so I wouldn't go out and get one just for the sake of this game. But if you happen to, excuse me, if you happen to have Link, go for it. So, as far as the characters go, I would have to say my favorite is definitely Link. But, like I said, it's worth trying out the other characters because everything from their dialogue to even the way that they stand still is so screaming of Zelda. Like when Midna runs, she summons like a Twilightified wolf, like in Twilight Princess, or the bug lady Agatha, where she uses these giant insects to plow through enemies. There's just so much of like, oh my gosh, I know that inside joke. Like Darunia when he dances Saria's song when he finishes a battle. Stuff like that. Now, the story, quite honestly, is not really that impressive. It serves mostly to show off, like, wow, these are some pretty awesome cinematics, but apart from that, there's really nothing to sink your teeth into. Now, some Zelda games have been known for delivering terrific storylines. This game is not one of them, but it does offer some pretty nice settings, and I do like the way that they take familiar Zelda locations and somehow are able to convert them into Hyrule Warriors-esque types of battlefields without sacrificing too much of the original location, like Skyloft, for instance. It looks pretty much like it did in the original game, but somehow it works as a fighting area. And quite honestly, after seeing how this game handled it, I said, dang, why don't they do that with Super Smash Bros.? I'd love to see, say, Gower Plain from Xenoblade Chronicles, or even like a Sonic the Hedgehog place done Dynasty Warriors style. And especially seeing the characters looking so massive, like when Link charges through enemies on his horse, or when Princess Ruto summons this giant ball of water to like drown the enemies in. You're like, man, the Super Smash Bros. Characters feels like wimps in comparison. So I could go on and on about the game's many modes and features, but that would be just making this video way, way, way too long. But I will address a few nagging problems that even if you're okay with a bunch of mindless action that somehow still looks really good, there are some things you're going to have to get used to. The game has a lot of running around. I've been told that the graphics downgrade to like the level of the regular Wii when you play two players, so you might want to keep an eye out on that. Lackluster storyline. You're definitely going to lose a lot, and sometimes for reasons that you don't know, because you're often told about what you need to do for a mission mere seconds before you're about to get a game over. The good news is that at least you keep your experience points, so if you die and try the mission again, then you'll be more powerful. Item usage is underwhelming. There's really not enough variety in the mini-bosses, which really got annoying when you played adventure mode and had to fight like 3 at a time. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, there's so much depth to this game that this review is simply not doing it justice. If you're just a fan of mindless action, go for it. If you're a fan of Zelda fan service, definitely go for it. If you're a fan of neither, this game's not even worth your time, unless you really like the epic music, in which case you can listen to it on YouTube. Anyway, thank you for listening to my video game review. Hopefully I can get around to playing Legends really soon because that looks so spectacular. But in the meantime, the Wii U version will suffice because it does have most of the content. And until my next video, keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye.